Hello all, hope you are all doing fine and staying safe. I'm Ajit Kodi, build distributed systems at Netflix and a part of data science and engineering team. So today I'll be presenting a tale of stateful stream-to-stream processing. As you all know, batch-oriented systems have done most of the heavy lifting in data-intensive applications for decades. Most batch-oriented systems usually process a bounded data source and produce a bounded output. In data processing systems, there are many use cases where we need to reuse the result of a previous computation in the current computation, or we have to reprocess the data for a certain duration repeatedly so that we get all the latest updates. Batch-oriented systems could use an external store to store the state and reuse it in the next iteration of the batch processing, but it's pretty rare. But this pattern is pretty common, where when we have to reprocess the data for a certain duration repeatedly so that we get all the latest updates or reuse the state of the previous computation, we repeatedly reprocess the data over a certain duration. And in every batch computation that we build a transient state. And while the batch is being processed, this kind of batch processing, I call them a stateful batch processing, as you inherently build a transient state while the batch is being processed. I want to talk about the stateful batch processing use case Netflix, which is a payment data processing. Netflix processes payments for 190 million plus members across 190 countries. And payment processing and transaction data is very critical for measuring the operational and performance health of our payments platform. Assume most of the audience are Netflix members and just want to take a minute and refresh the Netflix sign up process. So you visit the homepage, you register with your email, select the plan, and off you are enjoying all the great content at Netflix. If you aren't a Netflix member, the process is pretty simple. Try it out. Before looking at the transaction process into more detail, let's look at the payment transaction lifecycle. The payment transaction lifecycle starts with the transaction being in new status when it is initiated. And when the payment processor starts processing the instruction, it marks the status to pending. From pending, the transaction can move to approved status if the payment processor can process the transaction. Else, it will be moved to a declined state. The payment processor then tries to settle the transaction with the financial institution. If the transaction is settled, then it will mark it to settled. Else, it would be marked as cancelled. Before zooming into the transaction process into more details, we use the following notation to denote the transaction types. Yellow for pending, purple for declined, green for approved, brown represents a merged transaction where the declined transaction and the pending transaction are merged. And dark green represents a merged transaction where the approved transaction is merged with the pending transaction. And don't worry, we'll cover all these in more details in next few slides. Before we look into payment batch processing in Netflix, I want to quickly talk about a few components that we use in our batch pipeline. Keystone, which is a fully managed streaming data pipeline application. With Keystone, users can create streams, route the messages to one or more outputs, and before routing, you could apply filters and projections as well. Apache Iceberg is an open format table and improves the performance of large table and queries. Meson is a service which allows you to write, run, and monitor complex workflows in a rich DSL. Here's a high-level overview of the payments batch data processing. Netflix payment processor connects with the payment processor to charge or validate a user's card. The payment processor asynchronously responds back with the transaction status, which would be in any of the following: pending, declined, or approved. The Netflix payment service publishes these transactions to Keystone, which is a routing service, which routes these transactions to Kafka as well as to the Iceberg table. The batch pipeline then consumes these raw events, processes these raw events, and writes out the summary and the aggregated data to Iceberg as well as to Druid. Let's zoom into the payments batch workflow. The Keystone ingestion layer writes the payment transaction table. The payments fact job consumes these raw payment transactions from the payment transaction table and the server-side logs from the Dynacom, which is a fronting service at Netflix. The payment facts job then processes these raw payment events and enriches with the server-side logs and then writes it to the fact table. The fact table is then consumed by the transaction job and tries to figure if the transactions have been completed. More to follow on this in the next couple of slides. The transaction summary data is consumed by the transaction ag job, which ags the data by joining with several dimension data and then writes it to Iceberg as well as to Druid. The account summary job also consumes from the transaction summary table, and it tries to figure out the transaction from an account perspective, whether the transactions have been complete or not, and then writes to account summary table, which again is consumed by account ag, and then which again ags the data and joining with several dimension data, and then writes it to Druid as well as to Iceberg. Let's zoom into the payment transaction processing with an example. Let's say the data published by the payment service on Monday, we receive a transaction ID with 1 and the status as pending. So the transaction process is as follows. If we receive a pending transaction and an approved transaction within the batch we are processing, then we merge the approved and the pending transaction and write it to the resultant table. If we receive a pending transaction and a declined transaction within the same batch we are processing, then we merge the declined and pending transaction and we write the resultant into table. If what we have received is only pending and we have not received an approved or a declined transaction, then we store the pending transaction as it is in the table. Let's say on Tuesday, we received the following transactions, but we did not receive an update to transaction ID 1. So in this case, when we process the transactions, which is Mondays and Tuesdays, since for Monday's pending transaction, we have not received an approved or a declined transaction from the payment processor, we do not take any action and we write the result back into the table as it is. On Wednesday, we've received the following transactions and we did receive an update for transaction ID 1 with the transaction status as approved. On the following day, we have received a pending transactions for which we have received an approved transaction. So we merge the transaction and write out the merged transaction. So in production, we read up to 30 days of transactions and figure out what's pending and try to find out if there's a corresponding approved or declined in transaction. So as you see, we reprocess the data over and over and again in our batch pipeline. It's quite inefficient. And you may be wondering that this kind of processing might fit the bill for stream processing. That's exactly what we did, and we'll explain the learning and challenges we had while moving to the stateful batch workflow into a stateful streaming pipeline. Before jumping into our case, we want to talk about the stream processing and its variation. The stream processor usually processes an unbound source of input and produces an unbound output. There are often cases in streaming applications where we need to reuse the result of a previous computation. And to do that, we could use an in-memory store or an external store to store the state. Here's a high-level overview of the payment stream processing. The initial part is very similar. The Netflix payment service connects the payment processor to charge or validate the user's card. The payment processor asynchronously responds back with the transaction status, which could be any of the following, which is pending, declined, or approved. Then payment service also publishes these transactions to Keystone, which is a routing service which routes the transactions to Kafka, and which is consumed by our Flink sparse pipeline. And then it processes these raw transaction events and writes out the transactions to Kafka, Iceberg, as well as to Druid, and also uses RocksDB for all the state management. Let's zoom into the payment stateful stream processing architecture. In terms of business logic, it does not differ a lot when it's compared to the batch workflow. The Keystone ingestion layer writes to payment transaction Kafka topic. The payment fact Flink job consumes this raw payment events and also consumes the server-side logs from the Dynacom, which is a fronting service at Netflix, joins these transactions and enriches this transaction and writes it to the payment fact events. The payment transaction summary job consumes the payment fact events and tries to figure out if the transactions can be merged, which is the pending with the approved transaction or a pending transaction with the declined transaction, and writes out these events. These events again are consumed by a transaction AG job, which again acts the data, joins with several dimension data, and then writes it out to Druid as well as to the Iceberg as well. And then account summary job also consumed from the transaction summary Kafka topic, and then tries to figure out the transaction from an account perspective and writes the data to account events as well as to an Iceberg table, which is consumed by account AG, which again acts the data, joins with several dimension data, and then writes to account AG events Kafka topic, which is again written to Druid as well as to Iceberg for consumption of later of various services at Netflix. Let's zoom into the payment transaction stream job. The source operator consumes the events from the payments act events topic and parses and converts it into a Flink data stream. The data stream is then split by a process function into pending transaction and a non-pending transaction and emits two separate data streams. These two separate data streams are keyed by transaction ID and processed by a coprocessor function, which uses RocksDB to store the state and publish out the events when the transactions have been marked as complete. Here's the anatomy of a coprocessor function. In the open function, we initialize the state, which is the pending state and the non-pending state. And in the process element 1, if we receive a pending event, we try to merge it with the non-pending transaction. And if we receive a non-pending, if the non-pending transaction already exists, we write out the merged transaction. If not, we'll evict the pending event at a later point in time. In process element 2, if we receive a non-pending event, we try to merge it with the pending event. And if there is a pending event, we merge it and write out the merged transaction. Else, we'll evict the non-pending event at a later point in time. We also receive callbacks and we execute the on-timer method, which evicts the events which are still not merged and have lapsed the time. So there are two cases here. The first case is we receive a non-pending transaction. If we receive a non-pending transaction, then we check if a pending transaction already exists in the RocksDB. If it exists, it retrieves it, merges it, and writes out the merged transaction out. And we also evict the pending transaction from the store. If the pending transaction does not exist, and then we write the non-pending transaction into the RocksDB for later processing. The second case is we receive a pending transaction. We receive a pending transaction, and if the non-pending transaction exists, then we retrieve it, we merge it, and then write out the merged transaction. But it could also happen that we also evict the pending transaction from the store if it exists and we have already processed it and merged it. If the non-pending transaction does not exist, then it writes the pending transaction to the RocksDB store. Finally, let's look into the payment transaction processing with an example and see how it is done in the streaming application. Going back to our old data set, let's say this data is published by the payment services on Monday. That is, we receive a transaction ID 1 with the transaction status as pending. We have received a pending transaction, but we have not received an approved or declined transaction. We store the pending transaction in the RocksDB. And on Tuesday, we received the following transactions, but we did not receive an update for transaction ID 1. So we processed Tuesday's transactions. For Monday's transaction, we still have not received an approved or declined transaction from the payment processor, so we still do not take any action. On Wednesday, we received the following transactions, and we did receive an update for transaction ID 1 with an approved status. And since we have received an approved transaction, we retrieve the pending transaction, we merge it out and write the merged transaction out. So in production, we store up to 30 days of pending transactions and try to figure out if there is an approved or a declined transaction. As you see, we do not reprocess the data over and over compared to our batch pipeline. So the streaming pipeline is quite efficient. There are some typical challenges one faces while building streaming applications, which is late arriving events, out of order events, joining large streams, and exactly once processing. There are plenty of talks which cover these challenges in great detail. However, I want to talk about the challenges we faced when we want to hold a state for a long duration in a stateful stream applications, which is state size management, state schema evolution, bootstrap and recovery, and backfills. In our application, as I've mentioned, we need to hold the state for a long duration. We need to hold the pending state for 30 days and we need to hold the non-pending state for 1 day. There could be various reasons that we might not receive a non-pending transaction. Ideally, we should get an approved or a declined transaction followed by a pending transaction. But for some reason, let's say due to data loss on our end, we might have lost the approved or a declined transaction. And then we need a mechanism to evict the pending transaction after a certain period of time. There are two ways of limiting the lifetime of state in Flink and evict the events which are no longer required, using timers and using TTL. We can use the process function to evict the state from the store. Here's an example of using the timers in the process function. Let's say if we receive an event, we want to store the event and after a certain delay, we want to evict from the state and publish the event out. Then when we receive a payment transaction event, we add it to the state and then we also set a timer, which is event time sum plus some delay. The timer service would trigger and invoke the onTimer method when the watermark has crossed the event time plus delay. In the onTimer method, we check whether the timestamp has exceeded the event time plus delay. If it has, then we write out the transaction and then we also clear the state. So that's one way of clearing the state, and we use this heavily within our application. Few things to keep in mind. Timers are registered on a keyed stream, and since Flinks can only maintain one time per key and timestamp, so you can reduce the number of timers by reducing the timer resolution to coalesce them. Timers are also automatically deduplicated. Timers are saved in the state as well as checkpoints so that we can recover when the app fails. But this means we'll need more resources and may increase the checkpoint time. Note, timers can also be deleted. The other way to evict the state is by setting the TTL in the process function. Internally, the state TTL feature is implemented by storing an additional timestamp of the last relevant access along with an actual state. Well, this approach adds some storage overhead. It allows Flink to checkpoint for the various for the expired state during state access, checkpoint, recovery, or a dedicated storage cleanup procedure. Similar to a last example, instead of using timers, we could use state TTL to evict the events from the state store. We create the state TTL config and set the time we want to expire. In this example, we set it to 30 days along with certain other configurations such as when the TTL should be written and do we want to read expired events. So to set the TTL, we use enable time to live method. And now the event we store in the state would live in for 30 days and would expire after that. Few things to keep in mind about state TTL. TTLs can be assigned on keyed state of any type. Only TTLs in reference to processing time are currently supported. TTLs are not checkpointed by Flink. Also, you cannot store a state which was previously configured without TTL. Stream processing is mostly at least once, but upstream systems can produce duplicates. It's best to check for duplicates and avoid processing duplicates. You could maintain a list of keys which are already processed by the apps, and you could maintain the list of keys in the RocksDB. For every incoming transaction, you could check if it already exists. If it exists, then you could discard the transaction. Before going live, it's best to benchmark the state size and allocate the resources accordingly. It's especially very important when you have a large state size. It's good to benchmark your application under back pressure scenarios. Let's take a scenario where your operator is using RocksDB for the state management and is not able to process the events faster than the events being produced. Then the back pressure is applied by the Flink app and the Flink app starts accepting the messages at a slower rate from the upstream operator. so that the app continues to run and process events. We can also apply an appropriate rate limit to reduce the back pressure. And after benchmarking various scenarios, we can plan and allocate the resource to the app in such a way that normal operations should have enough capacity, provide some extra resources to handle the load during these types, which tend to stay away for a longer duration. And temporary back pressure is usually okay. If there's a short spike, Flink is well equipped to handle it. Last but not least, it's important to monitor the state size and RocksDB metrics and alert when it crosses the threshold. We monitor the various metrics such as live data size, compaction metrics, and table readers and writer metrics. Another challenge we had to face was state schema evolution. We need to consider that our schema might evolve as our business requirements change. It's trivial when you hold the state, expires in few hours, and you're okay with some data loss, then you can restart the app with a clean state. But it cannot be done in a business critical app where you need to keep the data loss at minimum. This is the payment stateful stream pipeline with multiple stream jobs connect together. And let's say if you want to add a few fields in the payment fax job and publish out the events, then the new schema changes might impact multiple jobs. So we need to think about schema evolution. We have written our app in Scala and we use Scala case class to hold the state. If you use Java object or Avro generic record, then the schema evolution is provided by the Flink, but not for Scala case class. In our infrastructure, we have added the capability where we convert the Scala case class to an Avro record, and we also serialize the bytes and writes to the RocksDB as well as to the checkpoint. And in a similar fashion, when we want to read the records from the checkpoint or from the local store, we deserialize the bytes to Avro records and then convert it back to Scala case class. Let's assume at T0, job 1 writes a record with schema version V1 into the RocksDB and we stop the job. We have new business requirements where we need to modify our Scala case class, add a few fields, and let's call it V2. And at T1, we spin up the new job using the last checkpoint saved. And in job 2, it might happen that we might have to read the record stored by the older job with schema version V1. At this point, we need to convert it to the latest Avro schema and to the latest Scala case class. It could also happen that we may not read the records with V1, but we might write records with schema version V2 into the RocksDB. So at T2, you could have, the RocksDB could have like records with multiple versions of schema. So as long as we adhere to the schema evolution rules, we should be able to read-write records with different schema versions. So here's a pseudo of the Scala of our Scala Avro type serializer we created. To create a type serializer for Scala case class, we extend the type serializer interface provided by the Flink, and we override the method which is serialize and deserialize by and deserialize method. In the serialize method, we convert the case class to Avro output stream using Avro 4s, and we write the bytes out to the stream. And in the deserialize method, we read the bytes, convert it into Avro, and convert it back to the Scala case class. And instead of using the default type serializer provided by the Flink, we ask Flink to use the Scala Avro type serializer when we initiate and create the state. When you have a large stateful pipeline, it is very important to think about the schema evolution. When you're holding a large state for a long duration, there would be cases where you have to restart the app with a clean state. So it's important to think about how do you want to do the backfill and recovery. Here's a refresher of the payment transaction processing again. We consume the events from the Kafka, process the pending and the non-pending transaction, and use RocksDB to publish out the events. In our case, for recovery, we create an iceberg table with the pending transaction for the last 30 days, and we store that in a bootstrap table. And then we switch the source of our Flink app to read it from the bootstrap table instead of the Kafka, and the payment processing remains exactly the same. But since we have only pending transactions, All the pending transactions will be stored in the pending transaction store. And we restart the app from the earlier save point, and we also switch the source back to Kafka. And since our pending transaction store has got all the transactions we need for our processing, we can resume our operations as normal. This is the way we have achieved. Other implementations might need a different variation. So it's important to think how will you bootstrap and recover your stateful application in case of failures. In data processing application, time to time need arises where we need to do a backfill for a larger duration. In streaming applications, that has always created many challenges, and many solutions have come up. At Netflix, many business critical applications maintain two code bases, one for streaming and one for batch processing. And the streaming is usually Flink and Spark for the larger backfills. That leads to many problems, such as keeping two code bases in sync and all the added overlay. To overcome these challenges and take advantage of all the batch infrastructure at Netflix, we came up with the following code structure. We encapsulate all the business logic in Scala IDTs, which are written in a very platform agnostic way. And we call the business logic specific transformation from our Flink and Spark constructs. So let's take an example and see how we've achieved it. We write most of our logic in Scala case class or an object. And in this example, we've added a merge non-pending function, which takes in a non-pending transaction and merges with the pending transaction and returns out the merged transaction. So we'll see how we use this functionality in both our Flink and our Spark pipeline. So let's take a, sorry. So let's take a look how we invoke the merge non-pending function from our Flink app. Here's a pseudocode of the coprocessor function, which merges the pending and the non-pending transaction. We receive the pending event and we check whether the non-pending event already exists in the state. If it exists in the state, we retrieve it and we call the merge non-pending event and we merge the transactions and we write out the transaction and we clear the state. If the non-pending event does not exist, then we store the pending event into the state and set a timer for a later eviction. Here's the pseudocode for merging the pending non-pending transaction in our Spark app. The join pending and non-pending dataset receives two datasets, which are of type payment transaction event. And we use the join with operator in Spark to join these two datasets based on a given condition and return a dataset with a tuple. And then we use a flat map to go over the tuple and we merge the pending and the non-pending event using the merge non-pending event. By structuring the code this way, we reduce the overhead of maintaining and updating the business logic in multiple code bases. We're also not introducing a new framework or a middle layer to operate on batch and streaming. And also by coding the business logic in a very platform agnostic way, we can move to new frameworks more easily in future if we have to. When we want to run a backfill, we just spin our Spark job, which reads the source data from our payment fact table for the required duration, and then we write it out to the target table. As I said, when you're building a large stateful streaming application, it's important to benchmark and tune your application, actively monitor the state size, think about schema evolution. Last but not least, while designing your streaming application, consider how you will bootstrap and backfill. You could draw some information from this presentation. I want to open up in questions you may have. I'll jump onto the Zoom channel which we have. I also want to thank the real-time infrastructure team and the data science teams at Netflix for providing all the support. And if you're interested in any of these teams, please feel free to ping me. Happy to help. We are hiring. Thank you and see you all next year. Stay safe out there.